The prince of all lycanthropes had been dead for several months, and the new order had well and truly cemented their hold in Eiru, where Inc. has rebuilt the facility. The council now housed Prince Kian as their figurehead. He had willingly given up Castle Grey to Were Inc., who now used it as a symbol of power to those in Eiru who would stand against them, those who would rebel against them. Prince Finn had not returned to Eiru. He hadn't been seen since receiving the news of Mihal's murder. He left Germany, but no one has seen him after that day. Lord Swift and his daughter, Aisling Storm, also reside in the Emerald Tower along with the Eiru Council. He has a seat next to Vladimir, while his daughter is now the acting head of the newly created Walkers, a combined force of Crownfall raiders and Were Inc. soldiers, who track down anyone who speak of the dead prince or could possibly be a rebel. The city of Amastigo, to the southwest of Eiru, was one of the largest cities and was able to hold both walkers and enforcers. Walkers that searched the streets and even houses and homes looking for rebels, morning, noon and night, as well as the remaining enforcers who still believed Prince Mihal could live, as he always managed to be a step ahead of everyone and every possible event and encounter. In its prime, Amastigo was a city of numerous stores, stalls, stands, marketplaces, etc., with little to no enforcement of the law, as it wasn't needed. A peaceful and plentiful city that now would not even be classified as a shadow of its true self. It is here we find Dohi, drinking himself into oblivion, trying to forget or ignore anything that would remind him of reality. It was awash with rogue and scum, the lowest that Eiru had to offer, from goblin to kobold, each with their own agenda. However, he sat at the bar on a old wooden worn stool, lit by torchlight, ignoring the whispers and obvious plans for robbery, murder, and worse, at the table behind him. He sat in his Were Inc. uniform, as he had sold almost everything else he owned to afford more food and drink for the last several months. All that he now had was his blackened armor and his rattle rifle, a fully automatic machine gun that got its name from the sound it made while being fired. Not very creative, but in these hard times, creativity, like everything else, was in short supply. He had taken to the bounty board for his coin, when he was sober enough to read, that is. Today was going to be a sobering day, as he shouted at the barman, "Same again there, I'd rather not see the poor glass empty. Sure doesn't you look lonely?" The barman, a large green ogre, took the glass away and replied, leaning in close, "You'll get more when you have more money. Until then, go home and sleep it off." Though he laughed to himself, trying to decide which one of the blurry ogres was in fact the real one. "Ah, come on now, you wouldn't deny your favourite customer a drink, would you? I mean, it's not my fault fucking whores are so expensive." The barman was not impressed, and told him, "Go home before you make matters worse for yourself. Were Inc. are not liked around here. Go home and sleep it off now." There was a few moments of hesitation before Dohi adjusted his glasses, realizing the barman was in fact much larger than him, and staring at him angrily. "Alright, time for me to go, so I'll see myself home, I guess. I wonder if your sister will make me breakfast," he joked to the ogre, who was not going to take remarks of the drunken werewolf in Were Inc. armor lightly. Nobody allowed them to slip past him. He slammed his meaty hands on the bar, crushing it, stepping through the broken wood, reaching out for Dohi. He tried his best to lift his rattle rifle, but was clobbered by the ogre's hefty hands as he threw a heavy left punch again and again while holding Dohi in place with his right. Once the ogre was satisfied with the punishment he had doled out, the ogre threw Dohi at the wall, then embarrassingly admitted to himself he had meant to aim for the door, and threw Dohi again, this time out onto the cobblestone rainy streets, bleeding and unconscious. However, second attempt, usually lucky for ogres. Whatever Dohi was dreaming of must have been good, as he lay in the street with a silly smile on his face, as wagons rolled on by and passerbyers hurried out of the rain. He awoke to a kick in the ribs some time later. It could have been the rain, the loss of blood, or maybe the thrashing he had received, or a mixture of all three, that had awoken him stone cold sober, but still laying in the street unmoved. Now there was a hooded figure looking down on him. "Get up, I've work for you, and no time for your self-pity act." A woman's voice came from beneath the hood, stern and authoritative. "Yeah, just give me a minute here, I need to count my teeth and possibly my feckin' ribs," he groaned. But she had little time for his dismissive attitude. She reached beneath her cloak and plucked a crude tool that she used to sharply extract a tooth from his mouth, only to notice that there were in fact several teeth scattered around him. "The feckin' hell are you doing, woman?" he yelped, holding his face as he rolled around in pain. "Well, I don't have time for your shite, so I'll just make you do the job I have for you with necromancy instead of words." Though he was now alert and ready to help in any way he could. "Hold up, wait, no, none of that, I'll help, no problem, just keep that shite away from me altogether." He shot up to his feet just as the clock tower chimed. "You have good timing," she barked at him before handing him a rolled up scroll bound with blue ribbon. "Oh yeah, some street urchin stole your rattle rifle as you slept." "Toodles," she chirped before disappearing inside the inn, where he knew he could not risk following. He never saw her face or got her name before she left. He did, however, have a scroll and a job, and a newfound fear of necromancy. Enough for him to do as she asked, while not sure if they had actually agreed upon payment. Maybe he wasn't as sober as he initially thought. Nevertheless, he had a job which was more than he had when he started the day, if in fact it was indeed the same day. He unrolled the scroll and counted 5 things, 5 seemingly ordinary, simple items that could have been bought at any vendor in the marketplace. Next to each of them was its location and a suggested means as how he could procure said item. First, there was a clodder ring. Second, a necklace. Third, a key charm. Fourth, a brooch. And fifth was a word he could not pronounce or even spell to save his life. He looked again at the inn doors, almost ready to go back in and ask what the last item was, and in fact what the payment was, but quickly decided it would be a bad decision. He was not willing to get another thrashing from that ogre. Right, so he shrugged to himself, strolling away into the city, where while inside the inn things had taken a turn for the strange and quite frightening. The hooded woman had the inngoers frozen in fear as otherworldly octopus-like appendages reached out from under her cloak, circled their necks, and lifted many patrons mid-air, suspending them in their choking prison. She maneuvered through the maze of tables and fallen chairs, talking aloud. "Crass and crude behavior will gain the favor and attention of a woman who does not value herself. I am no such woman. As such, I demand respect. Have I made myself clear?" There wasn't even a whisper in reply, just an accumulative shaking of heads. I'm glad to hear it. Barkeep, I'm looking for someone, a woman, with no name and a face so pretty you would easily forget it as soon as you saw it. She realized the patrons. She released the patrons and approached the bar, or what remained of it, lowering her hood. So, not as pretty as you then? Asked the ogre, worried he would offend her. She was an elf, but rather short in stature, taller than a dwarf, but not the typical elven height of 6 foot and over. She had leaves littered in her hair, which was black, long and braided with multiple braids tied together. On her face she had scar-like beauty marks on both of her cheekbones. Her brown eyes leered at the ogre for several moments, unnerving him more than he already had. Yes or no? She asked with greater authority somehow. We get a lot of women in here, but none that are forgettable, or at least not. I don't think so. I'd forget them if they were. The ogre answered, stuttering. Margarita, join me, a voice called out. She turned to see a hand waving, beckoning her to a corner booth that was blackened in its own shadow, somehow darker than the others. She knew it would be foolish, but she did indeed enter the darkened corner, where she sat in the shadow, inside which was lit like the morning sky, and the person who had beckoned her was a sickly pale woman with blood-red hair, cobalt eyes and ruby lips. She wore a very revealing outfit, with a fallen-sleeved brassiere top, a front open skirt of sorts, with one strip that hung between her legs, and others that hung from her waist and behind. Her clothing was grey in colour, holding a sapphire jewel at the centre of her brassiere top and her skirt. Who are you and what do you want with me? She asked, struggling to maintain her authority. You will do something for me, and I shall grant you that thing your heart's been pleading for all these years. The woman spoke with a voice so seductive it could have aroused even the most devout celibate of mankind. You presume to know me so well. What makes you think I'll do as you ask, merely because you ask it? Margarita dismissed the woman and attempted to leave, but was unable to find a way out of the corner booth she knew she sat at. You are Margarita Nadar, daughter of Ulat and Kewin. You studied necromancy for 20 years. You are currently running a black market ring right here in Amastigo. You supply both sides of the war, because it makes you great profit. You don't care who wins or loses. You care not how many lives you cost, as long as you make profit. You are a heartless, soulless creature, or at least that's what you keep telling yourself. Your parents have no idea their daughter is in fact costing the lives of so many of which, 1,413 to be exact, are her own kin, her own kind. You have killed more elves than any human ever has. You could not tell the truth to them. You could not tell the truth to yourself, even if you tried. You dream of being a warrior, an honor-bound adventurer, but you're a goddamn coward. You can't tell the difference between a sword and a chewed chicken wing you'd feed to a mongrel. Should I go on, or have you been embarrassed enough? Asked the sickly pale woman. No. I believe you. If you can get all that information so easily, I'm not sure what benefit I can be to you. The woman drew Margarita's attention to a body that was rolled in black leathers and bound with belts. I need you to smuggle that into Castle Grey undetected. Once it's done, I shall appear to you once again and grant you your heart's greatest desire, to be who and what you've always wanted. The woman's offer was tempting, but smuggling a body into Castle Grey? with wearing soldiers abound, and Castle Grey built to be a fortress by Prince Miall, Prince Finn, Prince Cian, King Fionn. If she was able to do this exact task, she would become infamous throughout Eiru. And if the stranger's offer was indeed genuine, this would be the last nefarious act she would have to partake in to achieve the life she no longer dared wish for. You have yourself a deal, Margarita smirked, reaching out her hand to shake on their agreement. The strange woman had another way of sealing her deals. The woman clicked her fingers, bringing them back to the inn, where the darkness was no more. In its place was a building fog that wrapped itself around the stranger's body, stripping her of what little clothing she wore, and saved her modesty by covering her breasts and lower extremities with a dense layer upon layer of living fog that never stopped moving, swirling or growing around her body. Her skin became a deep blue, and deeper blue still, and deeper blue again, until it was azure. And finally from the fog, she plucked a silver masquerade-style mask that attached itself to her face when she held it near. "We shall seal this deal with more than a mere handshake," she announced, waving her hands, controlling Margarita's body like a puppet on strings. She manipulated Margarita into drawing a dagger and cutting deeply along her forearm, then offering the wound to the stranger, who took hold of her arm, slowly licking the wound, sending her tongue into the wound and up her inner arm. The patrons looked on in discomfort. One patron seemed to be slightly titillated, as Margarita jerked and contorted, while the stranger's tongue found its way to her heart, and with a lick, a symbol was seared onto it. The ordeal may have taken moments, but to Margarita time felt like it had become distorted. Hours, minutes, seconds stretched out far too long, yet passed all too quickly. "You bear my mark now. You have 8 days to accomplish what you have agreed to. I will return and claim my mark by whatever means I deem necessary, should you fail." The strange azure witch told her as she disintegrated like fog being carried away on the air. "Right, nope, that's it, right, out, get out, every last feck of one is out that door." The ogre screamed in anger. "Mon, feck off, home, go on!" he yelled as he walked around each table, ushering everyone out of his inn in a hurry, and hurriedly boarding and locking the doors and windows before pulling himself a drink, only to realize nowhere in his own inn was big enough for him to sit, and so he would have to sit on the floor, silently sobbing, questioning his life choices that brought him to this exact point. Margarita was back out in the rain, worried that she had just done something ultimately stupid. But she quickly convinced herself it was the right choice. She had nothing to lose after all. She hurriedly flagged down a carriage that was passing by the inn. "Where to, young miss?" the coachman asked, tipping his hat, holding the reins loosely. "I need to go to the market and then home," she replied, flicking her hood up. "As you wish, ma'am, but I'm afraid the market will be closed at this point." "I didn't pay you to ask questions. I pay you to bring me places." "As you wish." He stamped his foot, opening the carriage doors. He waved her in, and she sat in the carriage, listening to the rocks beneath the iron band on each wheel, rocking her to sleep.